Whether you're a good ways from retirement or you're right on the cusp of that, you're probably trying to figure out exactly how much you need to retire. So what are your expenses going to be? How to figure this all up. So let's kind of go through a couple different approaches here on what people are using. Then I'll talk about what we here at Jazz use as well, just to kind of give you an idea, whether you're using us or anybody else or just going to Google for this thing, at least it can help you to get a head start. So the first one is really just looking at things. It's from a top-down approach. It's a 1,000-foot view. It's not what I would suggest doing forever, but you know what? If you're 40 and you're saying, hey, I want to retire at 60. I'm just trying to kind of figure this out. How much do we need to live on? Well, I'll give you the basics right here. So if you just say, well, I'm making $100,000 a year. If that's your income, you're putting $20,000 into your 401k. Well, now that leaves you $80,000. You could just say, you know what? I need $80,000 to retire on. Now, that is probably the most basic thing to do there. It does not account for any of your retirement goals. It does not account for healthcare. It does not account for any of that. So that's just kind of a really rough sketch of something, at least to get you started. But now let's really talk through what we here at Jazz talk to our clients about and really trying to figure things out. And that's more of the bottom-up approach. What you're going to do is you're going to start with your expenses. Now, I know, this is going to not make everybody happy, but I'm going to say the B word here, and that's budget. When it comes to the budget, you've got to figure it out when it comes to really breaking down what you need for retirement. Now, there's ways to do this. I've had clients who actually just go through and they say, all right, you know what? I'm going to go through every single credit card statement monthly, just calculate all of my expenses there. And most of their expenses are all on their credit card, whatever else they have, maybe their bank statements. That's what they're pulling from. They're adding those up and they're averaging out for 12 months, saying, perfect, here's what we need. That's an approach. It's not the most detailed, but I'll tell you, it's a lot better than what some people are doing, and that's just taking a guess. So figure out what your budget is, what you need as far as to cover or the money you need to cover your expenses there. Then from there, once you have general expenses laid out, then you've got to start to factor in other things that are going to come into play in retirement, such as healthcare. Now, this is one that could change drastically depending on what's going on, because a lot of people retire before the age of 65, and they're going to first go on COBRA, which is 18 months. It's often expensive. Other people say, you know what, I'm not even going on COBRA. They go to the Affordable Care. And if your income is pretty low, Affordable Care is affordable. If your income is really high, even in the retirement years, your adjusted gross income is high, it's going to be unaffordable care. So just remember that. But if you factor this in, you could say, okay, you know what? I need $4,000 in monthly general expenses. Now I'm going to go with $6,000 in annual costs for healthcare. Well, that's $500 a month. Now let's think about other things that maybe you want to do. Maybe you've got some grandkids you want to go see, or the world that you want to go see. $1,000 a month for travel. All right, so now you've broken this down. That's $66,000 total annual expenses. Now, we're not including tax here or unexpected expenses that you really want to think through to make sure you have the liquidity for those. Things like that you're maybe not thinking about. Or a roof could go out, a new vehicle, an air condition, all of these different things, home improvements that you're probably not thinking about and budgeting in. That is stuff that you want to make sure you have liquidity for in the retirement years. So now, continuing on with the bottom-up approach, it's figuring out where the money is actually coming from. Well, almost everybody's fortunate enough to have Social Security. So if you've got Social Security coming in, that's actually going to adjust for inflation or close to it as well. So that's a nice one to have and to account for. So let's just say that you're getting $24,000 in Social Security. Well, we started with $66,000. Now we subtract out the $24,000 in income. So now you only need to cover $42,000 in general expenses. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a pension. If you do have a pension, does it keep up with inflation? Does it have a cost of living adjustment, something in there that is going to increase as time goes on? If not, be careful, because if you're retiring at, let's say, 60 years old and you live to 90, $40,000 in a pension is not going to cover the same amount as it will at age 90. So really just thinking through that when you're breaking down your expenses. Then let's think through, what about your investments? So now we've got $42,000 we still need to cover for. Well, let's talk about how you should invest. Check this out. This is from Vanguard. It's a little dated, but it's 1901 to 2020. As far as the chart goes, it shows the average returns that you're going to get on a portfolio. 100% bond portfolio averaged 4%, 20% bonds, 20% stocks, 80% bonds, 4.8, goes on up. to 100% equities averaged 7.3%. Now, if you're looking at this though, the best year was 68.9%. Wouldn't you love to be in on that year? And then the worst year though was 41%. That's a danger that you've got to think through here, because if you have a all equity portfolio, 100% in the stock market, you're needing $42,000 a year to cover your expenses. There's some danger that comes into play here if you've got $1 million, but you have a negative 41% year portfolio year. So thinking through that, making sure that you're allocating your dollars the right way. But as far as the investment income goes, let's just start with $1 million portfolio. Maybe you have a lot more than that. Maybe you have a lot less than that. That's okay. I'm just trying to teach you the basics here with really trying to figure out how to cover your retirement expenses. So we could start with, let's just say the 100% equity portfolio, 7.3% return. Well, guess what? That's $73,000 in additional income that you could have there. But again, you have to account for inflation. Looking at inflation, there's the rule, the 4% rule. A lot of people lean on where they're hoping to get, at least 6 or 7% returns on their dollars, and then they're taking 4% from their portfolio. Now, when you're doing that, though, you have to factor in that there's going to be some down years. If you have $1 million portfolio and you're down, let's say 40% or 41%, you're going to have, $590,000? That's going to be a rough year. And if you want to go ahead and take still, 70-something thousand out of there, that could quickly deplete your assets. So you have to make sure that you're adjusting as these years go on when it comes to covering your expenses. Now, with this also, really just thinking through on the entire portfolio is just making sure that you're allocating properly. Going back to this chart to just show you this, let's just say that you're getting a 7.3% return if you're getting the 100% equities, but you have that drawdown risk there. Well, let's just look at maybe mixing that up a little bit. The potential for introducing some bonds into the portfolio. Maybe you're only getting a 4% return on the bonds on average, but they're only down 21.7% on their worst year. Well, if you're building something out here, you could say, you know what, if the bonds are doing a little better than the stocks, I could pull from those. If the stocks are doing better, I could pull from those. So you have a little bit of cherry picking that you can do when it comes to this portfolio to help you and factor that in. Now, as I'd mentioned before, you cannot forget about inflation. Inflation is going to be the silent killer when it comes to your portfolio. If you're accounting for expenses, just know that if you have $10,000 in expenses this year and next year inflation is up 3%, well, now you have $10,300 in expenses. So it's going to continue to go up. Now, there are some things that are going to change on your retirement scenario. Maybe you're not going to travel as much in the later years. As I'd mentioned with healthcare, maybe it gets cheaper once you get to the Medicare years. Maybe you have a mortgage now, but in 15 years, you're not going to still have a mortgage. Those are things that can change. And so what we do here at Jazz is we use a Monte Carlo analysis. It runs 1,000 scenarios. Now, you can find these out on the internet. There's different things that you can find. I want to help those that are just wanting to kind of look for the information. If you're not wanting to work with a planner, last time I did this video, someone was like, well, he just did a sales pitch. No, go do it yourself if that's what you want to do. But what I'm telling you is you can find a Monte Carlo analysis where it's at least going to help you to run the 1,000 scenarios, stress test the plan a little bit to figure out if the expenses are the right amount. You can also do what a lot of planners do, and that's called a cash flow analysis. The issue with the cash flow is it's like an Excel spreadsheet. It just goes down in order, and it doesn't factor in the drawdowns in the market. That's the one risk with that. But those are out there on the internet, or if you're looking for a planner, we're here, or there's plenty of other great ones out there. So I hope that this helped you significantly. I hope that this time maybe I'll get some nicer comments below.